Commandos. Hope you guys are doing well today. It is Wednesday, July 6th, and I am happy to report that it is another amazing Wednesday wrap-up from Rooster himself. Woo! So hopefully you guys are enjoying this segment as much as I'm enjoying doing it. It's really nice, and it gives me a reason to definitely stay up to date on different comics. Got a cat clawing at my leg. But it definitely gives me a reason to check out, to make sure that I'm staying up to date on my comics, so I can tell you guys what I think's awesome, what I'm really enjoying. It's giving me another chance to really go through and just be like, oh, what's on the rack? And instead of just pulling out my my normal pull list, I'm looking for things like, what would I not normally read? What would I what would I want people to recommend to me? And what am I just gonna pull off the shelf and think, yeah. So, and we do have a comic for like that actually later. So this week includes 2 comics off of my pull list and 1 comic off the new wall. That was not on my pull list, but I think it's actually going to go on my pull list after this. So let's start off with Amazing Spider-Man number 15, introducing what? Iron Jane? Mary Spider? Well, okay, Mary Spider sounds stupid. I'm going to go with Iron Jane. I think that sounds cool. Of course, if you're following the Amazing Spider-Man story arc, Regent, I think, from the Renew Your Vows story arc in Secret Wars has popped up, and he's doing pretty much exactly what he did in Secret Wars, except just, on a small scale. He got, like, everybody but Spidey and Iron Man, but, disregard that. I mean, we didn't notice that in any of the books, but, it only happened for a little bit, so don't worry about it. But yeah, so last issue ended with Spidey and Iron Man getting picked up by Regent, and they were getting taken to his super secret prison. And it was like, oh no, what's going to happen? Well, this cover pretty much actually, in a rare case of telling you exactly what's going to happen, told you exactly what's going to happen. Mary Jane picks up the Iron Spider suit and goes, and she kicks some tail in a fantastic issue. It gives you a great callback to... Excuse me. It has a great callback to the Spider Island, great callback to Mary Jane wearing the M1 Spider armor the M1, the Mark 1 Iron Man armor. Gosh, I can't talk tonight. A long time ago. Sorry, guys. I had something got in my throat and I have a bottle of water like I normally do. But yeah, so it's really cool. The cover's done by Alex Ross, which is fantastic. I actually have a J. Scott Campbell variant coming on the way, because normally I don't buy his, but I'm a Spider guy, man. That's one of the reasons I've avoided doing Spider-Man before, is I'm such a Spider-Man fanboy that even if it was just terrible, I'd be like, well, guys, this is a 11 out of 10. It's amazing and epic and fantastic. But this really was, like, to cap the story off, it's so cool, and it's leading into the Dead No More story arc, which the end of this had a great moment where Peter's like, man, I'm doing this so long, and I've lost so much that he's got to reconnect with his family in a way. And I really like that. Obviously, Spider-Man wins. Oh, gosh. Sorry, guys. Obviously, Spider-Man wins. The good guys, of course, are totally going to win. But the fact that Peter comes to that realization, he's lost so much throughout, this career, throughout what he's been doing, he's got to take time to enjoy the little things. And that's so important. And I think, like, as a guy who's been so influenced by Spider-Man his entire life, that's something I already knew. But it's always great to see your hero, like, reinforce those values and ideas that you have as a person. And, getting to watch MJ in the Iron Spider suit was pretty awesome. And Peter even was like, I gotta trust her, and he tosses her some web cartridges, and you're like, yeah! I read this issue twice. I was so into it that I was like, I'm gonna read this a couple times. And then I read it the second time, and it's like, this is still fantastic! So, highly recommend Amazing Spider-Man 15. If you haven't been reading The Amazing Spider-Man, or maybe you got turned off by the idea that Peter's actually successful at something, highly recommend it. Give it a check. Check it out. The Zodiac storyline, for me, it ran a little bit too long. This Regent storyline, I like the fact that it just seemed nice and quick. But I like 3-issue story arcs. I like, it's like setup, or maybe it got set up a little bit ago, but then, you have setup, middle conflict, resolve. I'm okay with a big overreaching arc once in a while, but this was nice, compact, short. My favorite way, because that way I'm not like, 28 issues later, what's gonna happen? Which is still how I feel about Superior Spider-Man. I went, when's Peter coming back? But yeah, Amazing Spider-Man 15, Iron Spider with Mary Jane, top notch, guys. Definitely check it out. The last panel, I'm not gonna ruin it for anybody, but I was like, what's gonna happen next, because I mean, there's definitely, you know, if what happened on the page is what's gonna be, and it's not like one of those teases, it's gonna have some repercussions, and I'm really intrigued to see where it's gonna go. So, loved it, fantastic. Spider-Man, as always, top notch. The next book I'm going to pick up is actually, it's another popular one. Again, I try to stay away from the big names just because I'm like, well, everybody's reading those. I should showcase something else, at least some B-list comics. But this one, it was just, I read it, and I had no idea it was going to go this way. And I was like, and that would be The Walking Dead 156, King and Queen, or is it Queen and King? I'm sorry, it's Queen and King. Now, obviously, that's Negan, and that's Alpha on the cover. And will they have a romance that lasts? Survey says you probably should read this issue. Oh gosh. It's really cool watching Negan try to incorporate himself into the Whisperer Society. If you're not up on the Walking Dead arc, the Whisperers are people that wear walker suits, and they whisper back and forth to each other, hence the name Whisperers, and they kind of live amongst the Walking Dead hordes. It's really interesting. I'm not really sure like how their history is, but it's really cool to see Negan trying to fit into their society. And then the last panel in this book, you're like, what? I thought they were setting up for a bit of a story arc, and I was going to be like, oh my gosh, so much more exposition. No. You like Negan? Good, you're going to love this book. Don't like Negan? You might want to set this one out then. I think it was actually really well. Honestly, in the past, I would say probably since All Out War, Walking Dead for me kind of lost a little bit. It's just like so much exposition, like with the time jump, and you're like... Then the Whisperers came up, and you're like, ooh, I'm intrigued. And then this issue, really, I mean, it honestly, it had me thumbing through, like, from the minute the last issue with Negan meeting up with the Whisperers, and this issue all the way through the end, I was like, tell me more. So it has been a minute since Kirkman's really grabbed me like that. I would say it's been since All Out War, definitely, where I was like, I want the next issue now. I'm really interested to see what the status quo is here. I feel it's a huge shift. It's just like in the issue where the Whisperers killed all the people from, Alexandria, the Hilltop, the Kingdom. Rest in peace, Ezekiel. You're Rashiva now, buddy. Spoilers, I guess, if you haven't read that issue. That was like 10 issues ago, though, so I don't feel as bad. But in all seriousness, yeah, man, like, this issue, big status quo, definitely setting up for a Whisperer war, which sounds really cool. Not sure how it's going to be, not sure how Negan's going to play a part in it, because, I mean, he's kind of a wanted man. So it's going to be really interesting to see how he really navigates what's, in essence, going to be a political landscape whenever everything really comes to a head. But just the setup for this issue is going to be awesome. I can't wait to see what happens. Kirkman, you've done it. You brought me back into the fold completely. I'm, like, ready for the next issue. Like, yeah, tell me more. I want it. So, Walking Dead, Skybound, top notch. And finally, now this comic, in fairness, I picked up originally off the rack because I thought it was going to be a different person. I saw Acquire at the top, which I hope I'm pronouncing that right, and my apologies if I'm not. This is Kim and Kim. And I saw Aguirre at the top, and I thought, oh, this is going to be Aguirre Sacasa, the Roberto Aguirre, a fantastic writer who is one of my favorite playwrights also. As a theater guy, I was like, yeah, he writes comics and plays. So he works, like, for me, he, like, covers all of my loves, all of my hobbies. This was not them. This was, I believe her name's Claudia? Yes, Claudia Aguirre. Aguirre? I don't know. I'm botching names, and I'm really bad at them, so I do apologize, Claudia, if somehow you come across this video. But I was not expecting to, but I picked it up, and I was like, well, it's number one. It's a new series. I don't know Black Mask Studios at all. It's Kim and Kim from Black Mask Studios. And the cover art alone made me think it's like, I don't know, Gem and the Holograms meets, like, Private Eyes. Because I really dig, I hope you guys can see that. That's the logo, is like a guitar with some sort of assault rifle. I was like, well, that's really interesting. So I'm going to check this out. And it was interesting. If you look at the art, it reminds me a lot of like some of those like cartoons they're putting out nowadays. I don't know, man. Like I got a very, I don't really know, man. I got a very cartoony vibe. But then, I mean, they're swearing like sailors. That was a surprise. but they're swearing like sailors in here. It's honestly, it's kind of like I wasn't expecting that. I was like, oh man, they're not playing around in this book at all. So that was actually pretty cool. Pretty much the idea is Kim and Kim are bounty hunters, and I think at least one of them used to work for another organization who you run into, Sar and Columbus of the Catalans. And now they're kind of just on their own, and they're trying to, find some big bounty, and they catch a bounty, and then they have a battle. And like, it's a little bit of exposition in a world that I really don't completely understand yet, and it needs to, I probably should read the issue again or take notes before I do this. And I'm like, oh, I don't really know. But it's a different world. It's new, and I like that. It also has, one of the Kims is a trans character, and I think that's really interesting. Because, LGBT is such a big issue nowadays, and it's handled so, just nonchalantly. The character mentions how she used to be a partner with, I think it was Sar, and how she thought that, maybe he's gay, and she wanted to be gay because then she didn't think she would be weird. So she's transitioned. I don't know how far in the transition. She definitely looks like a she. So she's definitely that far along in the transition. And it was really cool. Like, for me, I was like, oh, this is really interesting. And it was just the banter between the friends. They're like, hey, if we do this, we're going to have enough money to have, booze and alcohol and, horror comics for, 5 years. And I'm like, that's what they want to spend their money on. That's like what I'm working for my paychecks, My paychecks pay for booze and comics. So I could definitely relate with characters. But I thought it was so cool because I'm like, they're good friends. They're just bantering back and forth. Nonchalantly, they drop this, big, oh yeah, well, I used to think maybe I was just, a young, confused man. And you're like, what? And I had to reread the panel for a minute just because, it just came out of nowhere. And then nowhere else is it addressed. And I'm like, that's how comics need to do this. Don't make a big deal. Don't beat us over the head with it. Just drop, hey, this is a character. They're trans. That's cool. Because it is. That's how it is. That's the real world, guys. So, sorry if you don't like that view, but that's definitely the standpoint the Commandos have. People are people. Be cool to each other. And, man, I was down with it, man. The art style, the story, it's different. It's out there. It's got that, intergalactic space cop vibe. And I'm like, tell me more. Tell me more. So I'm going to be adding Kim and Kim to my pull list. It is written by Madeline Visaggio, who also... I'm not 100%. I did a little bit of research into this, but not enough that you should totally quote me on this because I could be wrong. But I believe she worked on the story while she was transitioning. So that's pretty cool. I'm like, yeah, that's nifty. So this is definitely, I feel like there's definitely a lot of the character in that. There's potentially a lot of the character in that for that writer. And that's how she views herself, which I think is that's awesome, Maybe this is her coping mechanism, how she was like, well, this is who I am. This has helped her find herself. So the story's definitely up there. It's an indie comic. It's from Black Mask. It's a company I've never heard of. But the story's definitely enough to actually make you go, And it's just, I'm digging it. Like I said, it's got this really crazy, Gem and the Holograms kind of vibe. And, just look at that cover. If that does not evoke Gem and the Holograms, man, I don't know. So this is Gem and the Holograms for adults. It's Gem and the Holograms. I would say maybe a little Lumberjanes-esque. Lumberjanes actually is probably a really good art example. I dig it. I don't know. There's something about it that I'm digging the vibe that it's given. So I'm really excited to see where the story goes. I can't wait to actually go out and add it to my pull list tomorrow. Yeah, so if your comic shop has it, definitely pick it up. If not, I recommend a special order because it's definitely something to crow home about. Alright guys, that's all for this video. Thank you so much for listening. Let me know what you think of the comics. Let me know what you're reading this week, and I'll be more than happy to respond to that. And everybody, you have a great night. It looks like Squiggles is home, as you can hear him screaming in the background, so you guys have a great one. Rooster signing out.